Good evening. Today is December 16th. It is day 71 of the war between Israel and Hamas. Welcome to the Hebrew TV Living Room Experience. All Israel News has been showing you for the last 3 weeks, Channel 11. Today we're showing you Channel 12. I'll be helping you with the Hebrew. These are the same images and footage and stories that Israelis are watching in their living rooms. Let's take a look at what Channel 12 is bringing here. By the way, there are 4 news channels in Israel, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Tonight we'll watch 12 together. Shalom to you. Israel is dealing this weekend with one of the hardest incidents no one ever thought of or imagined could happen. 3 Israeli hostages that were kept in Gaza by Hamas for 70 days managed to escape. They raised a white flag. They yelled, "Help, Hatzilu," but they were tragically shot by the Israeli soldiers who mistakenly thought they were a threat. Rotem, 28 years old, Alon, 26 years old, and Samar, 24 years old. This evening also another tragedy is that another family of a hostage girl, Inbar Hyman, 27 years old, was found dead, was killed by Hamas in captivity. The families of the hostages in Jerusalem are sensing a sense of urgency, and they're asking for an agreement of exchange of hostages versus terrorists now. They're sensing the urgency. And in the north, a reserve soldier, Yechezkel Azaria, 53 years old, was killed in the northern part of the border with Israel. We start with the reporter Neil Dvori that will give us more details about the tragedy of the 3 hostages being killed. He says it's a very severe incident and very tragic incident. This incident didn't need to happen. What difficult conditions the Israeli soldiers are dealing with. The Israeli hostages were without a t-shirt, without any arms, without a weapon, and holding a white flag. They did everything they could to be safe. The IDF soldiers also thought that this may have been a trap where the terrorists do something in order to bring the soldiers in and then bomb them. The IDF did not prep the soldiers that this may happen, that hostages come out and asking for help. Here's the article and the story, the full story about this. This is what Sajaiya looks like in the last few days in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Many run-ins, many terrorists that tried to hurt the IDF soldiers. Yesterday, 10 a.m., the Golani Brigade is in this building, situated there. And in this building, right in front of them, are the hostages. 3 hostages are coming out with no t-shirt, holding a white stick with a white flag. One of the soldiers yelled, "Mechablim, terrorists," and they shot. 2 of them were hurt. The third one runs in. The soldiers cease fire because of the commander that says stop. They ask the third soldier to come, the sold hostage, what they think is a terrorist, to come out. He says, "Hatzilu, help," but they shoot him as well. Only after they were dead, they realized what a tragedy this was, what a mistake this was. They needed to make sure that they were safe, but this is in a time of war, and the pressure is immense on these soldiers. Just the building next to where this happened, there was a spray that was written SOS and 3 hostages. Right now, the IDF is looking and investigating if there is a connection between that building with the graffiti spray on it and the building with the 3 hostages. The last few days, there were other graffiti sprays and writings on other buildings as an attempt to pull soldiers in and to bomb them. After this incident, the protocol of opening fire has been sharpened and reviewed. This awful and tragic incident just shows the difficult and complex situation the IDF soldiers are in, because the first thing they want to do is to bring back hostages safely into Israel. The difference between success and failure in this case was as thin as a hair. These soldiers were taken care of, and they're continuing to fight as more and more incidents of real terrorists are actually happening. The anchor says that the Chief of Staff, Herzi Halevi, is relating to this incident. 3 of the hostages that survived 70 awful days in Hamas in Gaza were killed by the IDF, by our forces. There's nothing more than what the IDF soldiers want than to bring hostages back home safely and alive. We feel greatly the grief of the families for the death of the hostages. The IDF and I, as his commander, are in charge and responsible to what had happened. And we'll do everything we can that these kinds of incidents will not happen again. The anchor is saying that the chief of staff is saying very clear things. And the question is, how does the army, the military, continue from here? Neil Dvori, the reporter, says that the fact that 70 days, these hostages survived 70 days in Hamas, and they were killed by Tzahal, by the IDF, just breaks our heart. It reads, Tragedia hayeri b'chatufim, the tragedy of the shooting of the hostages, and the chief of staff says the IDF and me, as its commander, are responsible for what happened. Coming up is the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's press conference, but first we'll listen about the outlines of a potential new hostage deal. They're saying it's a new deal. The War Cabinet will discuss this evening the outlines of possibly a new agreement for exchanging Hamas terrorists for hostages. According to officials, Prime Minister of Qatar is the mediator between Hamas and Israel, is telling the head of the Mossad of Israel to present an offer to the release of the hostages. But Israel says, Qatar, no, you can start. You start the offer. You tell us what Hamas is willing to. But as we see, Hamas wants a complete ceasefire, the end of the war completely, and Israel just cannot do that right now. Let's listen now to the IDF spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, about the tragedy. We published today the details about the tragedy, the hard event that happened, where 3 hostages were killed by our forces. All of the IDF is bowing their head and is hugging the families in this tough hour. We will continue to investigate this incident until the end. The spokesperson is speaking about other operations that the IDF has been doing during the weekend, like operating in a hospital where they found large amounts of ammunition, in the children's department, and other attacks around Rafah and the north, what it's doing in the north against Hezbollah. We see the press conference now coming together with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Gallant, and the other War Cabinet official, Gantz. Here's Prime Minister Netanyahu about to speak. And he says, citizens of Israel, we're in a war over our existence. In this war, we have to continue. We must continue until we win. The state of Israel is grieving over the death, over the 3 of our hostages, Alon Shimriz, Samer, and Yotam Chaim. When I was updated about this tragedy, it hit me. Alon, Samer, and Yotam survived the horrible captivity for 70 days. They were this close from life. They really touched freedom. And just then, the disaster happened. It broke my heart, and it broke the whole nation's heart. And our hearts are with the families in this hard hour. And I'm also wanting to strengthen the hands of the soldiers who are fighting. We'll do everything to protect our soldiers. Each one of them is precious and dear. We'll do anything we need to protect our soldiers in Gaza. Since the tragedy yesterday, there's one thing that's occupying my mind. What would have happened if just something was different? I'm sure this thought is occupying other people's mind. We would be so close to hugging the hostages, but unfortunately we cannot take the time back. And whoever fought in the battlefield knows that the difference between success and tragedy or disaster is as thin as a hair. Within the great pain, we'll learn the lessons, we will apply the lessons learned, and we will not let go of the great effort, the political effort and military effort, until the victory in this war. And this pressure that we're putting is important also for the release of the hostages and for demolishing Hamas. Without the military pressure, we wouldn't have been able to bring back 110 hostages earlier in the stages. And without this military pressure, we won't be able to bring any more hostages. Our success is dependent or is based on this pressure that we're putting right now on Gaza and Hamas, on Hamas and Gaza. And he's mentioning Hanukkah, that 3 days ago we lit the last Hanukkah candle, the 8th candle. And back then, way back then in Hanukkah days, the Jewish won over the enemy then. And now the Maccabees, now the modern day Maccabees are fighting in Gaza. It reads, we lost precious heroes that fell in the battlefield so that our life won't stop here in the land. As we hear Prime Minister Netanyahu, we hear throughout all the news this Saturday evening, this is one of the hardest and most tragic days Israel is dealing with since the beginning of the war. We never thought this could happen. We never imagined this would actually happen, that the IDF soldiers would kill 3 hostages that are surrendering or that are coming out claiming that they're hostages. Even though this is hard news, please share this news with your friends. These stories need to be heard. For more stories, you can go to All Israel News and follow us on our YouTube channel. This is Rotem Magen for All Israel News.